Hello everyone, it's Fjaller. So I know there's only a couple days left for this event, but for those of you who are putting this off until the last minute, hopefully this guide can still be of some use to you. So we're going to be doing the 5th Lodoss challenge, which is Flames of the Frozen Sky. And I gotta say, this challenge is way easier than the last one. So for this fight, you fight against two different bosses, Parn and Deedlit. The basic gist of this battle is to just run your characters back and forth between the two. But because this fight gives all player units plus 5 movements right from the first turn, that makes positioning a lot easier than it otherwise would be. Now both these bosses have a skill that will wipe the entire party if you have nobody in range of them at any given time. And they both have a skill that encourages you to switch to the other boss every single turn. So you don't necessarily have to be working on both of them at once, but it is important to have at least one unit, and sometimes two for Parn, within your range at any given moment. And unless your units are super bulky, you're going to need to switch targets for every unit every single turn. Now the reason I say Parn sometimes needs to have 2 units in his range instead of 1 is because he has an AoE that has a knockback effect on it. And if your only unit in range gets knocked back, then it counts as him activating his talent and he will just blow up the entire team. Now of course, if you have a unit that can resist knockbacks, such as Landius with his 3-cost skill or Serena with her revive skill, then you could just plot them down, let them tank Parn all day while you switch between the two doing damage as needed. The final mechanic, which is probably the one you need to pay most attention to, is the fact that Deedlit can debuff you with something called Frostbite, which can only be removed via taking damage from the debuff that Parn gives out, which is Spark, which causes a unit to deal damage in one ring around them at the end of their turn. This damage does count as fixed damage, so you can be immune to it via using, obviously, Bracer Emblem, or perhaps more notably, Meditation Ring. The rest of the mechanics in this fight are pretty straightforward, I think, so if you want to take a closer look, you can just pause the video and look over some of the info I've written down. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the party I've brought into this battle. So I think all of them are using what should be considered pretty standard builds on all of them. The helm that Sophia is using is actually Yggdrasil's Wreath. I'm only using the limited version of the equipment as the picture because I couldn't find a more proper one to use. As for Almeida, her Martyr class is overall better. I just use Oracle because I like how the sprite looks. You do want both her class paths mastered, however, because you do want mass heal from the Oracle line. And Crystal Enchant would probably be better than Clock Enchant, given how I use her here, but, you know, my Almeida has Clock Enchant, so I went with the Clock Enchant. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's jump into the fight itself. So the first thing you're going to see me do here is run my DPS to the left side to start attacking Parn. So the reason I attack Parn first is because he has higher defense, and I want them both to die around the same time because of the abilities they have. The other thing is that Parn has Highland Warriors and I want to get rid of them as soon as I can. That way you won't do extra damage to Grenier. Parn himself, even though he looks like he's an infantry class, as you can see he's actually a boss class, so he's not going to do extra damage to Lancers. Almeida is just moving into position, which is those 2 center squares right there. You'll see that if she stands within those 2 center squares, not only can she move back and forth between the 2 different auras that they will put up, she will be able to put her random debuff talent onto both of them every single turn. There's going to be a couple turns where I run her out, but for the most part you're just going to see her run back and forth between those 2 spots. You can see Flame Force, that's Parn's aura, and this attack that Deedlit uses does shuffle your units around within 2 rings. It can move you way over to the lower right corner or the upper right corner, which will make it difficult for you to reach Parn, but it will not make you move so little that you can't at least get into his threat range, which is the important thing to do. So you can see that I use Grenier to activate the Spark damage, which removed the Frostbite debuff on Chris. You can also see that Chris did not take any of the Spark damage because she's wearing the Meditation Ring. You can also see that Narm is wearing Jormungandr's Eye. That actually comes in handy quite a bit in this fight. It's just an extra chance to lower the damage dealt by the boss. So this is one of those cases where, you know, I didn't really have space, so Almeida moves into Deedlit's range and did not debuff Parn this turn, but it's okay because I casted Tornado on him last turn, which lasts 2 turns. So he's going to have an attack buff, even if I don't keep Almeida in range. Almeida does add a bit of RNG to this fight, but overall Almeida is consistent enough, and she is doing the debuff often enough that it's very unlikely you'll get unlucky enough that you will not have some kind of attack debuff on the boss at a given time. You'll see with Chris that I'm going to favor Discipline a lot over Redemption, and that's often because obviously attacking you're going to take damage back, and I want Chris to heal back up. It's important to keep your damage reduction up on your DPS, whether it's Last Rites or the Mage or Holy Soldier damage reduction bonus, because these bosses hit quite hard. It's not a reason that I brought Bishops on Sophia and the Forest Priests on Almeida. Allow them to more easily top off characters no matter how low they get. So as a general rule, if you have multiple units getting frostbitten by Deedlit, as you can see here, obviously the thing you want to do is to move the non-sparked characters over first. So when you use the character with spark debuff, they can run over there and just hit everybody with it. So as you can see, Chris got knocked away by Parn so far that she actually can't reach Deedlit anymore. So I'm going to have to think of something else. Even though Chris was engaging with Parn last turn, because she got knocked out by his attack like that, she did not actually get the physical damage taken plus debuff, so she can just attack safely into Parn. So right here, Sophia is going to tank a hit from Deedlit because I really couldn't get Chris into range. Thankfully with that attack debuff on, those bishops were able to take the whole hit. So you can see for this turn I'm just going to leave the Frostbite debuff on Sophia. Remember that you have 2 turns before the character gets frozen by Frostbite, so you do have some wiggle room and you can play around with it. And that's one of the things that's nice about this challenge, is that you are given time to react to all these mechanics, rather than it just being an RNG mechanic where something spawns or something and then you instantly lose because it's spawned in exactly the wrong place. Generally speaking, you're only going to lose in this challenge if you make some kind of mistake. Or if you don't meet the stat check, obviously. As with most other challenges, this is a very strict stat check. So as you might have noticed, Grenier did not bring a tanking skill. He just brought Vacuum Buff, Block, and Power Stab. And that's because you really don't need a tank for this fight. As long as your DPS have enough HP and defense enchants, as well as soldiers that are, and if you debuff the bosses enough so that your soldiers can soak up a lot of the hits, then it won't be a big deal. So I bring aim on Narm obviously to cycle cooldowns faster, let her use attack skills a bit more often, but as a bonus you can also see that Jormungandr's Eye is activating which adds an extra layer of safety to attacking into these bosses. You can also see Almeida's global talent heal doing quite a bit of work there. Putting Matthew back into an HP range where he can attack safely into Parn. As you can see, this ice explosion put both Chris and Sophia into quite a unfavorable position. They're both pretty much as far away from Parn as they can be. So you see me taking quite a bit of time here just trying to figure out how exactly I want to position Chris and Sophia, and seeing if I can still get a hit in with Chris. So Grenier runs all the way back to D-Lit and does not attack because he is out of soldiers, and Grenier being a rather low magic defense character, I did not want to risk attacking and possibly getting him killed. I get a Gale on Matthew. I brought Gale, Air Slash, and Attack Command on Matthew. Even though Gale is RNG, I did have quite a bit of time left over. I believe I had 2 turns left over by the end of this challenge. Since this challenge lasts so many turns, you do have quite a few turns to gamble on Matthew getting at least 1 or 2 Gale activations. The important thing is to ask yourself, how statistically likely is it for me to get something like Gale to activate over a long fight like this? So in cases like that, unless you're astronomically unlucky, you should get Gale to activate at least once or twice in this fight, which is a 15-turn fight. Gale is less useful in fights where you need to deal with mechanics on very specific turns, because then, of course, you would need Gale to activate at a specific moment, which is way worse than having a fight like this, which is just, I gotta do lots of damage. Any Gale would be useful. So you can see, once again, I move Narm. I move one of my DPS out, in this case Narm, because she's at somewhat low HP. I don't want to risk having to have one of my DPS die while attacking into the bosses, which again, they do quite a bit of damage. Obviously, if you have the Clock of Forgiveness, you can just take the risk and not care. I do have to clock up forgiveness, but I do try to make these videos a smooth, no clock run. Also, if you have Tiaris, again, Tiaris, probably best PvE character in the game. You know, she removes just so many problems that you might run into if you're not using her. Again here, I'm casting heal to top off Chris, so I can make sure her damage reduction is active. My Chris does not have last rites because, as I've said before, I am not swimming in last rites like some other players. So you can see here, after some consideration, I decide not to use Rewind on Sophia because there's still quite a few attack skills active on both Narm and Grenier. So I felt like it would have been a waste, even though it would have put Air Slash back up. So Grenier coming in with the Power Stab, and also sparking Chris, which isn't a big deal because she has Meditation Ring. And Meditation Ring really does help a lot with this fight if you bring mages, because it does allow you some positioning that you otherwise wouldn't be allowed to because of spark damage. Once again, Ice Explosion decides to put Chris in the furthest possible tile away from Barn, which is very annoying, but like I said, it is not so far that you can't at least get back and distract Parn while he's trying to use his big AoE, so that's the important thing. Here we have Narm using aim to get her snipe skill back up. In a very, very dangerous position. As always, remember that the AoE that Parn does is a 3x3 attack. So even if you don't keep track of the cooldown, you can easily position in a way so that you can easily position in a way so that you can account for it. So you can see at this point that Deedlit is very near death, and Parn has still quite a bit of HP. So past this point, I'm going to be sort of ignoring Deedlit. I'm going to be sending people to take hits from her, but I'm not going to engage with her if possible. It's important to kill both of these bosses either on the same turn or at least within a turn or two of each other, because it's not like they lose any of their skills. Or they don't lose any skills when the other one dies, so that can be a problem. So you can't just kill one of them and then expect to have plenty of time to kill the other. The mechanics just don't work in that way. Parn energy slashes 3 different units and pushes them out, which can be a good thing because since Narm got pushed out of his range, it means that Narm does not have the physical damage taken plus debuff this turn, and she can attack him again if I want her to. So here you can see Deedlit just kills herself on Matthew, which is not a big deal because Parn is also nearing death, so it's pretty easy to clean up from here. And in fact, this should be the last turn. Parn gets really mad that Deedlit is dead, and just look at that damage output. And you'll see right here that Chris is actually going to get one shot, which just goes to show this is why you cannot just kill one of them and then expect to be able to kill the other one. Alright, and with that, this challenge is over, and that is all the Lodoss War challenges. So once again, I know I was a bit late to the party, but hopefully this video will be useful to some of you. And once again, this is Fjaldr from the Wikigrisser, and I'll see you guys next time.